When you remove yourself from someone's life, something profound happens, something most people don't expect. Absence is not just about disappearing physically. It's about creating an emotional shift so powerful that it forces the other person to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about you, themselves, and the relationship. It's a psychological trigger that disrupts their entire perspective. At first, they may not even notice. They go about their routine as if nothing has changed. After all, they've grown used to you always being there, whether in their messages, their calls, or their life in general. But then, slowly, an unsettling feeling begins to creep in. It happens so subtly that they don't even recognize it at first. Maybe it's a moment when they pick up their phone, expecting to see a message from you, only to realize that nothing is there. Maybe it's when they scroll through their notifications and notice that for the first time in a long time, your name isn't appearing. They brush it off at first. They tell themselves that you'll reach out soon, that you always do. They convince themselves that nothing has changed. Days go by, and yet something starts to feel off. They wake up in the morning and check their phone again, but still nothing. They start to wonder, but they push it to the back of their mind. They go about their day distracting themselves, telling themselves that this silence is temporary, but deep down a seed of curiosity has been planted. Where are you? Why haven't you reached out? What changed? The mind is a fascinating thing. When something is always available, it's easy to ignore. But the moment it disappears, it becomes the only thing that matters. That's when the shift begins. By the time a week has passed, they are no longer just wondering, they are analyzing. They start replaying old conversations in their mind, looking for clues. Were you upset? Did something happen that they missed? Maybe they scroll through past messages, trying to pinpoint the last time you interacted. It's in these moments that they start to realize just how much of a presence you had in their life. The same presence they once took for granted is now gone. And that absence is louder than any words you could have spoken. At first, they tell themselves that they are fine without you. In fact, they may even feel a temporary sense of relief, but that relief is short-lived. Humans are creatures of habit, and when a routine is disrupted, it creates discomfort. Whether they acknowledge it or not, they had grown accustomed to having you there. Maybe they weren't always the best at showing it. Maybe they got too comfortable, too secure in the idea that you would always be there, no matter what. But now, with you gone, they're forced to confront something they never had to think about before. What life looks like without you. As more days pass, the absence becomes undeniable. It's no longer just a missing notification or an empty conversation thread. It's a feeling, a void. They start to notice it in small moments. When they hear a song that reminds them of you, when they experience something funny and instinctively want to share it, only to realize that they can't. They reach for their phone, only to stop themselves because they know that you haven't been reaching out either. That's when it truly starts to sink in. You're not just giving them space, you're forcing them to experience life without you. By the time 2 weeks have passed, their emotions are no longer under control. They may not show it outwardly, but internally the questions are becoming louder. Why haven't you called? Are you thinking about them? Have you moved on? Are you talking to someone else? And more importantly, why does this silence bother them so much? They don't like feeling out of control. They don't like feeling uncertain. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. They thought they had control over the situation, but your absence has proven otherwise. At 3 weeks, they are no longer just missing you, they are craving you. That's the power of absence. It transforms something that was once overlooked into something that feels essential. They start questioning their own decisions. Maybe they didn't appreciate you enough. Maybe they should have been more present. Maybe they were wrong to assume you'd always be there. The realization hits them like a wave, one they can't ignore. They may try to distract themselves, to pretend like it doesn't matter, but the truth is, it does. And every single day that passes without you only reinforces that truth. By the fourth week, the feeling is undeniable. The absence has turned into a deep awareness of what they have lost. The power dynamic has shifted completely. The person who once had control over the situation is now the one questioning everything. They replay old memories. They wonder what you're doing. They consider reaching out but hesitate because now, for the first time, they are experiencing what it feels like to be the one waiting. That's the moment they realize that they never truly understood your value until you were no longer there. When you remove yourself from someone's life for 30 days, you don't just create distance, you create an emotional reset. It's a moment of stillness, pause that forces you to step back and see things for what they truly are. In the noise of everyday life, emotions can become tangled. Attachments grow out of habit rather than true connection, and sometimes pain is held on to simply because it has become familiar. But when you take a step back, when you choose silence over reaction, everything begins to shift. At first, it may feel unnatural. The impulse to reach out, to explain yourself, to seek closure, it's all there tugging at you, trying to pull you back into the cycle you're trying to break. The mind craves familiarity, even when that familiarity is toxic. You may catch yourself wondering what they're thinking, if they miss you, if they even notice that you're gone. But this is the moment where you must resist. This is the moment where the reset begins. The first few days are the hardest. You are breaking an emotional habit, and like any habit, withdrawal is inevitable. If you are used to constant communication, the silence might feel deafening. If you are used to validation from them, the lack of attention may feel unsettling. The mind will try to convince you that you're making a mistake, that reaching out will give you relief, that just one message will ease the discomfort. But that's an illusion. The discomfort is necessary because it's a sign of growth. Growth is never comfortable. As the days pass, something interesting begins to happen. The emotional chaos starts to settle. The things that once felt urgent no longer hold the same weight. The unanswered questions, the need for validation, the constant overthinking, it all begins to lose its grip on you. You start to realize that your emotions, the very ones that once felt so overwhelming, are not permanent. They come in waves, but like waves, they pass. And with each passing day, those waves grow weaker. Your mind, once fixated on what they are thinking, begins to shift its focus back to you. You start to notice things you hadn't before. You begin to understand how much of your energy was spent on someone who was never meant to hold that much power over your emotions. You start to see where you overextended, where you ignored your own needs, where you gave too much of yourself without receiving the same in return. The space you created is no longer just about them, it's about reclaiming yourself. By the second week, the changes become even clearer. The emotional triggers that once had control over you begin to fade. You start to feel lighter, freer. The moments of missing them are still there, but they are no longer consuming. Instead of longing, there is reflection. Instead of pain, there is clarity. You begin to see the situation for what it truly was, not just through the lens of your emotions. And in that clarity, you realize something powerful. You were never as attached to them as you were to the idea of them. That's the real breakthrough. When you step away for 30 days, you aren't just giving them space to miss you. You are giving yourself space to see clearly. When emotions are high, they cloud judgment. They make people believe they need something they don't, that they can't live without someone who is never truly adding value to their life. But when you remove yourself from the situation, when you allow yourself to breathe, The truth comes rushing in. You see the patterns you overlooked. You recognize the cycles that kept you stuck. You understand that your attachment was never about love. It was about emotional conditioning. By the third week, the transformation is undeniable. The version of you that started this process is no longer the version standing in front of the mirror. You have regained your sense of self. You no longer seek external validation. You no longer crave a response, an explanation, or an apology. What once felt like an emotional void now feels like an opportunity to grow, to evolve, to step into the strongest version of yourself. The silence that once felt unbearable now feels empowering. The energy that was once drained by overthinking is now redirected toward yourself. You start investing in things that make you feel whole: your mind, your body, your goals. You realize that the most powerful thing you could have ever done was walk away, not because you wanted them to suffer, but because you needed to find you again. By the fourth week, the emotional reset is complete. You are no longer bound by the same emotions that once controlled you. The person you thought you couldn't go without is no longer at the center of your world. Their absence no longer feels like a loss, but rather a necessary step toward your own growth. And in this space of clarity, something incredible happens. You realize that the only thing you truly lost was the version of yourself that tolerated less than what you deserve. When you disappear for 30 days, something shifts. Not just in them, but in you. In the beginning, you might expect them to notice right away, to feel the absence immediately. But more often than not, the first reaction is indifference. They might go about their life as if nothing has changed, carrying on with their routine, assuming that you'll eventually reach out, just like you always have. That's because they've grown accustomed to your presence, to your energy, to the idea that you'll always be there, no matter what. But as the days pass and silence stretches longer than they anticipated, something begins to happen. It starts as a subtle feeling, an unfamiliar emptiness that they can't quite place. They may not acknowledge it right away, but a part of them starts to notice the missing piece. Maybe it's the absence of your name on their phone screen, the lack of your usual check-ins, or the realization that they haven't heard your voice in a while. And that's when the first seeds of curiosity begin to sprout. At first, they brush it off. They assume you're just busy or going through something, but deep down, there's a shift taking place. A shift that forces them to question their assumptions. People don't realize how much they rely on certain connections until those connections are no longer accessible. The security of knowing someone is always there creates a sense of comfort, a subconscious certainty that they don't have to try too hard because they assume you'll always be around. But the moment you take that certainty away, the foundation starts to crack. By the end of the first week, they start to feel an unease they can't ignore. They may not say it out loud, but they start wondering, where are you? What changed? Why aren't you reaching out? They may convince themselves that they don't care, that it doesn't matter, but the human mind is wired to seek patterns. And when a pattern is broken, it creates discomfort. Their mind begins working overtime, trying to rationalize your absence, trying to fill in the blank. By the second week, that unease starts turning into something deeper. The curiosity grows into something stronger, something that lingers even when they try to distract themselves. They may go out with friends, focus on their work, or even entertain new distractions, but every so often, their thoughts drift back to you. They wonder if you've moved on, if you've found something or someone that has taken their place. They may not reach out, but they check your social media looking for any sign of what's going on in your world. And if they see nothing, if you've truly disappeared without a trace, it only makes them more restless. By the third week, the shift becomes undeniable. What started as curiosity has now turned into a feeling they can't quite shake off. Maybe they still don't want to admit it, but they are feeling the loss. They are feeling the impact of your absence in ways they never expected. They start remembering the little things. Your laugh, the way you made them feel, the small details about you that they once overlooked. They start wondering if they made a mistake, if they should have valued you more, if they took you for granted. Their mind begins playing tricks on them, making them recall old conversations, moments that seemed insignificant at the time, but now feel like fragments of something they lost. They may start thinking about reaching out, but their ego holds them back. They don't want to be the first to break the silence. But the longer they wait, the more it eats away at them. They may even try to convince themselves that they don't care, that they've moved on, but their subconscious tells a different story. The discomfort lingers, the questions grow louder, and the realization becomes clearer. They underestimated what your presence truly meant. By the fourth week, the absence is no longer just noticeable, it's undeniable. What was once a small curiosity has now turned into a void they can't ignore. They may try to rationalize it, to tell themselves that it's just temporary, that they'll get over it, but deep down they know something has changed. They have felt the difference. They have experienced life without you, and now they are left with the consequences of that reality. At this point, they have a choice. They can either reach out, attempting to restore the connection they once took for granted, or they can remain in silence, wrestling with the weight of what they let slip away. Either way, they are no longer in the position of power they once believed they had. The balance has shifted. The absence has forced them to confront something they never expected. That maybe, just maybe, they needed you more than they ever realized. When you remove yourself from someone's life for 30 days, you are doing more than just creating space. You are forcing a recalibration of energy. Every relationship, every interaction is an exchange of energy, whether you realize it or not. And when you have been consistently present in someone's life, always reaching out, always showing care, always making yourself available, they become accustomed to that energy. It becomes a part of their routine, a part of their expectations. They may not consciously acknowledge it, but they rely on it. They assume it will always be there. And because of that assumption, they don't always appreciate it. They don't feel the weight of your presence because they have never had to experience the depth of your absence. But the moment you remove yourself, the moment you decide to go silent, something powerful begins to shift. At first, the shift is subtle. They may not even notice. If they are used to you always being the one to initiate, always being the one to check in, the first few days may feel like nothing more than a small break. They may assume you are busy or distracted. They may even enjoy the temporary silence, mistaking it for freedom. But what they don't realize is that silence is not empty. It is full of echoes. And as the silence stretches longer than they expected, as the usual pattern remains broken, those echoes grow louder. They begin to wonder why you haven't reached out. They start to question what changed. At first, the ego tries to rationalize it. They'll be back, they tell themselves. This is just temporary. But as the days turn into weeks, doubt creeps in. And doubt is powerful. Doubt disrupts certainty. Doubt forces introspection. They may try to distract themselves, but the mind is relentless. When something breaks a pattern, the brain fixates on it, searching for an explanation, trying to restore balance. And this is where the shift deepens. Because it is no longer just about missing you, it is about realizing what your presence actually meant. It is about recognizing the energy you brought into their life. The way your words, your attention, your presence made things easier, made things better. They start to remember the moments when you showed up for them. They start to recall the times when you were the only one who truly understood, the one who listened, the one who cared. And in that remembering, something else happens. They start to feel the weight of your absence in ways they never expected. The silence once mistaken for freedom now feels unsettling. The space that was once ignored now feels empty. And that emptiness is not just about you being gone. It is about them confronting a truth they have been avoiding. Because in that space, in that silence, they are left with only themselves. They no longer have your energy to lean on, your validation to rely on, your presence to soften the loneliness they didn't even realize they felt. They are forced to sit with themselves, to face their own thoughts, to deal with the emotions they once drowned out by the comfort of knowing you were always there. And as the days pass, they start to question everything. Why did they take you for granted? Why did they assume you would always be there? Why didn't they appreciate what they had when they had it? The mind does not like unresolved questions. And when those questions start to build, they create discomfort. That discomfort lingers. It stays with them throughout the day, creeping into their thoughts. When they least expect it, they may try to suppress it. But the mind always circles back to unfinished business. And you, in your silence, have become that unfinished business. As the weeks continue, they begin to realize the true cost of your absence. It is no longer just about curiosity, no longer just about missing a familiar presence. It is about the stark contrast between what was and what is. They now see what your presence truly brought into their life, not because you told them, not because you argued for your worth, but because they had to experience life without it. And that experience is far more powerful than anything words could ever convey. Now they find themselves in a position they never expected. They start to feel the urge to reach out, to break the silence, to reconnect with the energy that once felt so certain, but hesitation sets in. Pride battles with longing. They don't want to seem weak, don't want to admit that they miscalculated, so they wait. They tell themselves they'll give it more time. But the longer they wait, the more uneasy they become. Because deep down, they are starting to understand a truth that is both simple and profound. You were not just another presence in their life. You were a presence that mattered. And now that presence is gone. When you disappear for 30 days, something powerful happens, not just to them, but to you. You may think that the real impact is on the other person, that they are the ones who must sit with the weight of your absence, that they are the ones who must feel the shift. And while that is true, there is something even more significant happening beneath the surface. Something within you that is transforming in ways you may not have expected. Because disappearing is not just about making them notice your absence. It is about rediscovering your own presence. It is about breaking the cycle of dependency, about stepping away from patterns that have kept you stuck, about reclaiming parts of yourself that you unknowingly gave away. In the beginning, it feels unfamiliar. If you have spent so much time giving, reaching out, and making yourself available, there is an initial discomfort that comes with silence. You may even feel the urge to break it, to check in, to reassure yourself that the connection is still there. But that urge is not about them, it is about you. It is about the part of you that has been conditioned to seek validation through presence, to measure your worth by how others respond to you. And this is where the real transformation begins. Because when you resist that urge, when you sit with the discomfort instead of running from it, you start to see something you may have overlooked for a long time: your own power. As the days pass, something shifts within you. The silence that once felt heavy now starts to feel freeing. The absence that once felt like a loss now starts to feel like space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to reconnect with yourself. You start to realize just how much energy you were pouring into someone else, how much of your time and effort was spent trying to be seen, to be valued, to be appreciated. And now in their absence, you are left with a simple but profound truth. You were always whole, with or without them. You begin to notice things you hadn't before. You start to feel lighter, more in control. The moments of anxiety that used to come from waiting for a response, from overanalyzing their words and actions, begin to fade. You are no longer trapped in the cycle of wondering what they are thinking, what they are feeling, whether they miss you, because now your focus is shifting. You are turning inward. And in that shift, you are reclaiming parts of yourself that were once lost in the pursuit of someone else's attention. You start to realize that your worth is not tied to someone's response, that your value does not decrease just because someone failed to recognize it. You see, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop seeking external validation, something incredible happens. You become magnetic, not because you are trying to make them miss you, not because you are playing a game, but because true power lies in knowing that you do not need to be chosen to be valuable. By the second or third week, you feel the difference in your energy. You are no longer checking your phone every few minutes, no longer replaying past conversations in your mind. Instead, you are focused on yourself. You are investing in your own growth, your own peace, your own happiness. You are filling the space that was once occupied by someone else's indifference with things that actually nourish you. And in doing so, you start to radiate a different kind of energy, an energy of confidence, of self-assurance, of someone who knows their worth. And here's the paradox. This is the very energy that makes people notice. When you are no longer seeking, when you are no longer chasing, when you are no longer available at their convenience, they start to feel the difference. They start to sense the shift. And this is when they begin to wonder, not just where you went, but how you changed. Because the truth is, people can feel energy. They can sense when someone has detached, when someone has leveled up, when someone is no longer operating from a place of need, but from a place of abundance. And by the time they realize it, by the time they start to feel the full impact of your absence, you are no longer the same person who left. The version of you that once waited, that once needed their validation, no longer exists. You have evolved. You have stepped into your power. And the most powerful thing of all, you no longer need their reaction to confirm your worth. You no longer need their attention to feel whole. Because in those 30 days, you did not just disappear from their life, you reappeared in your own. When you disappear for 30 days, the most profound transformation isn't just about how they react. It's about how you change. Because when you step away, when you remove your presence from someone's life, you are doing something that goes beyond just making them notice your absence. You are creating a shift, a reset, a space where something new can emerge. And what emerges is clarity. Clarity about who you are, about what you deserve, about the way you have been showing up in relationships, and about the way others have been treating you. It is a process that strips away the illusions, the attachments, the need for external validation. It forces you to see things as they really are, not as you once hoped they would be. At first, there is resistance, because stepping back requires discipline. It requires the ability to resist the urge to check in, to reach out, to explain yourself. It requires you to sit in the discomfort of silence and allow it to do its work. And this is where the real battle happens, not with them, but within you. Because for so long you have been conditioned to believe that your presence must be proved, that your worth must be demonstrated, that love and attention are things you earn by constantly being available. But when you step away when you withhold that constant availability, something incredible happens. You start to see the truth. You begin to see who truly values you and who only values your presence when it's convenient for them. You begin to recognize the difference between those who appreciate you and those who simply enjoy the benefits of having you around. You start to notice how many times you justified someone's inconsistency, how many times you ignored the signs, how many times you accepted the bare minimum while giving your maximum. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. The illusion shatters, and in its place, a new awareness is born. This awareness changes everything, because now you are no longer looking at the situation from a place of longing, but from a place of observation. You are no longer emotionally entangled in what they do or don't do. You are watching how they respond, watching how they react to your absence, watching whether they reach out, whether they check in, whether they even notice that you are gone. And in this watching, you gain power, because the truth becomes undeniable. Those who truly care will show it, and those who don't will reveal themselves in their silence. And this is where your perspective shifts, because instead of wondering, do they miss me? You start asking a much more important question: do I even want to return? And this question is powerful, because before you may have felt like the one waiting, the one hoping, the one left in uncertainty. But now you realize that the choice has always been yours. You realize that your absence wasn't just about seeing how they react. It was about discovering how you feel when you are no longer caught in a cycle of seeking validation. And what you find is that you feel lighter. You feel clearer. You feel more in tune with yourself. The emotional fog that once clouded your judgment begins to lift, and in its place there is a new sense of self-respect. You start to recognize that the person you were before this break, the one who was always available, always giving, always trying, was operating from a place of fear. Fear of losing someone, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. But now that fear has less power over you, because you see that you are still whole, still complete, still standing strong, even without their presence in your life. And here's the irony. Just as you are gaining this newfound strength, they are starting to feel the full weight of your absence. They are beginning to realize that the energy you once gave so freely is no longer theirs to take for granted. They start to question why you haven't returned, why you haven't reached out, why you seem perfectly fine without them. And this realization is uncomfortable for them, because for so long they were used to being the one in control, the one who dictated the rhythm of the relationship. But now the dynamic has shifted. Now they are the ones wondering. Now they are the ones feeling uncertain. And this is the moment of reckoning, not for them, but for you. Because now you have the power to decide, do you return to what was, knowing what you now know? Or do you embrace the new version of yourself that has emerged in the space of your absence? This is not about punishment. It's not about games. It's about recognizing that sometimes stepping away is the only way to see clearly. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is distance. Distance from the noise. Distance from the uncertainty. Distance from anything that made you question your own worth. And in that distance, you find the answer. Not in their reaction, not in their messages, not in their attempts to reconnect, but in the way you feel about yourself now. In the way you no longer need the validation you once craved. In the way you have stepped into a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and unwilling to settle for anything less than what you truly deserve.